not hear my name. Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Community Church. There's an exclamation point. So, we are a welcoming congregation where we strive to transform ourselves and the world through love, wonder, and connection. My name is Carrie Williams Jensen. I use she, her pronouns. Sure, hey, that's put them together. What have you got? And I serve on in the choir tech team, currently on the called task force, and different things. A couple of announcements. So for clarification, today, make sure you stay after service so I can vote on the bylaws. And don't worry, the Baker's Dozen is happening, and it will start after the meeting, so don't feel like you've got to run out and make your claim or stake your claim, whatever, because it won't start until we're done with the meeting. So. And last but not least, Sam would like to thank everybody that contributed presents, their donations of gifts, and they're going to be getting donated tomorrow. So whether you are here for the first time or the 1,000th time, welcome. Whatever you are facing in your own life, welcome. This is a place where we try our very best to be real with one another, to get through hard things together, and to remind ourselves and one another of the values that ground and center us, that motivate us and move us, literally and figuratively. So whoever you are, whatever your faith journey, whomever you love, you are welcome here. We welcome all who seek to know the sacred and all who seek to make our world more just.
Good morning. As you can see, I'm not Kathy Wimmet. We have different colored hair, by the way. I'm Jane Lux, and I use she, her pronouns. And Kathy's at home recovering from a medical procedure last week, but hopefully she's watching, hi Kathy, at home and making sure I read her words correctly. As a member of the call process task force, Kathy has been valuable in helping to keep our focus on our theme today, which is presence in the congregation. And these are her words. Sitting in church last week, I noticed 3 brass offertory plates behind the pulpit. 3 is important because 1 had been missing for a long time. They were bought and inscribed by 4 of our members 31 years ago. Why did we purchase and engrave 3 plates? We dreamed that our church would grow until we had 3 rows instead of just 2. In our own church sanctuary. We had dreams for a big church and still do. This is tricky. This one says on the bottom, from Sharon and Peter Defer in 2003. in commitment to community. This one, and I'm told, Sarah, Kathy said you didn't remember this. Sarah Long. Sarah says, in commitment to service by Sarah Long in 2003. And this one from Kathy Wimet in 2003 says, in gratitude for those who were our guides. Each UU church has congregational polity, which meaning we make our own governing decisions. That's why we were able to begin this church using consensus as our means of making decisions, and then change that process in later years when we grew larger. However, we have also depended heavily on the UUA and recommendations they gave us, the best practices for how to govern our church. We do stand on their shoulders. We have some important work to do as a congregation in the coming months. Today, 2 questions are being put forward. First, together we must define what our collective ministry is for this church. Both our internal ministry for members and friends and our external ministry in the larger community must be defined. Second, Reverend Sarah Goodman has been here serving as our contract minister. So together we must decide, do we want to call Reverend Sarah as our full-time minister to lead us in our ministry? Every week you hear in the conclusion of the offertory that we thank you for your time, talent, treasure, and trust. Well, today we aren't asking you for your treasure. The stewardship committee will do that in February. But we do need your time in the next 3 months to attend small group meetings in January and February, and to attend 2 congregational meetings, one today and one in March. Your trust in your fellow church members is needed, so we will have responsible discussions to define the larger ministry of our whole church and decide if we will ask Reverend Sarah to lead us in our ministry. Your talent and wisdom are needed for the discussions at our small group meetings, while we respectfully determine the will of our 189 members. We, the members of our community church, will make this important decision together. As I said, as Kathy said, we receive guidance from our denomination, but the decision is ours to make at congregational meetings, and the process we follow is spelled out in our bylaws. Today, you'll hear from the task force that you all chose to guide this process: me, Jane Lux, Stephen Smith, Michelle Nadeau-Bertram, Carrie Williams-Jensen, and Kathy. We will discuss what this means to us personally and more about the process that the congregation needs to know. So now I ask, how much does this church community mean to you? Sorry. Your time, talent, trust, and participation, your presence are needed now. Now, if you'll join me in the covenant together. Our commitment is to be together in covenant. So please join me in our affirmation of who this community is, beginning with that all-important word. Love is the message of this church, and service is our way. This is our great covenant together, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love,
Thank you, Jane, and thank you, Kathy, for those definitely reminder words. And so now, if you would rise in body or spirit to sing our opening hymn, it is number 360 in the gray hymnal. Thank you. You may be seated. All right, now for our chalice lighting, if Karen would come help us with that. And in the service today, I think all of us on the task force are kind of, my bad, so sorry. Oh, it went out. There you go. See, tag team, community. We have to, yes, yay. Thank you. But we're at different points in the service, we're kind of different ones of us on the task force are talking about our whys, and here is is that good? Kind of succinct reading from Dorothy Day, and she says that people say, "What is the sense of our small effort? They cannot see that we must lay one brick at a time, take one step at a time. A pebble cast into a pond causes ripples that spread in all directions. Each one of our thoughts, words, and deeds is like that. No one has a right to sit down and feel hopeless. There's just too much work to do." That's from Dorothy Day. And now Steve.
Good morning. I'm Steve Smith. I use he, him pronouns. Let's take a minute to settle in and get centered. I invite you to get as comfortable as you're able. You may want to stretch, adjust how you're seated, shake it out a little bit of the tension. Whatever you need, just try to give yourself a little bit more physical comfort, if that's possible. And now I invite you to notice if it feels okay to pay attention to your body for a bit, to notice a place inside that feels like a center. And just breathe with your attention there, if you'd like. You might want to notice the presence of love at this center. See if it's there, and breathe into it. With each in-breath, notice love at the center. I joined UUCC 8 years ago, and I've at times been a member of the choir and also part of the ministerial search committee that formed 3 years ago. Then this past August, I was asked, along with Kathy, Jane, Michelle, and Carrie, to serve on the Call Process Task Force. The Call Process Task Force. The call. Well, I thought I knew something, or at least I should know something, about what a call is. I mean, there I was, a 5-year-old boy playing kick the can with all the other kids from my Philadelphia neighborhood well into the summer evening. That night, I was also Batman, and my mother had used safety pins to attach a dish towel to the corners of my shoulder so that I could have a superhero's cape. And when my mother would call me to dinner, I knew that was an important event. Or as a trembling boy in 7th grade, clutching the touch-tone phone in my hand, as I called Andrea Coburn to see if she wanted to go with me to the winter semi-formal dance. I knew that was an important event. But as I stared at the word call over the past couple of weeks, I realized I didn't know much. I would have to do some research. The word calling is often synonymous with the word vocation. Vocation comes from the Latin word vocare, to call. In the Christian tradition, one's vocation, the place where one worked and toiled all day long, was the place where God was understood to have called each person to serve the community. In the Unitarian tradition, the word call is undeniably related to these historical roots. But there are some important distinctions too. The words that begin a Unitarian service may be known as the call to worship. And as individuals, we can certainly be called to do something, whether that is just getting out of bed in the morning or even undertaking a major life endeavor, such as moving across the country or having children or joining a faith community. The thing for Unitarians is that the calling does not necessarily need to come from an all-powerful, omniscient God. The call may mean listening to one's own conscience, feeling inspired by something we see in the world, or heeding that still small voice within. That brings me back to the idea of a called minister and what this moment is all about. There are so many questions to consider. What am I being called to do in my life? Does it feel right to stay in the status quo or to make a change? Also, what will be the calling of our current contract minister? What are we as a congregation being called to do with our larger ministry? And what are we being called to do in this important moment in our history?
Thank you, Steve. And now is the time for our Centers of Connection. And as we come together every Sunday from our own separate lives in our own separate homes, we bring with us a variety of joys and sorrows, fears and hopes. We take time in our service now to honor those big feelings together. We share this time as a contemplative time, each of us given an opportunity to share within the community what lifts us up and what weighs us down. Today, we will light candles of joy and hope to lift up the bright things in our lives, and we will also place stones to hold our sorrows and fears to ease the weight from our spirits. And in a moment, I will invite folks to come forward, but to folks online, if you're online, please use the chat to participate in our ritual. Write your name and then stone or candle, and I will add your stone or candle to our altar. If you're in the room and would like to light a candle for joy, but would like Michelle to light it for you, please raise your hand now. And then Scott in the back. And if you would like a stone place, I'm sorry, where was the candle? All right, so one more candle.
We're struggling a little bit.
And I was gonna say, you can relight them. They are, they have the little wick. Yeah, yes, teamwork. And stones, if you want us to place a stone. Okay, so one in the back. All right, thank you. Now, if you would like to come forward, you can do so now. Usually, if you're going to light a candle, if you come around this way, and if just a stone this way, of course, you can do both. And we light one final candle for, sorry, I lost my place. We light one final candle for all the joys that remain in our hearts and place, am I? Oh, I am so sorry. Oh, for Matt, a candle for Matt. And is that the only one? Microphone. Oh, I'm sorry. So Mac, one for Mac. All right, now we light one final candle for all the joys that remain in our hearts and place a final stone for the remaining sorrows this morning. And if you please join in our sung prayer response.
And today, instead of a question, I'm going to invite you in to pretend with me, and we are on a game show! Yay! Okay, so this is a television game show where you're offered a choice of 2 doors to open. If you open door number 1, you will receive $1 million. That's right, $1 million just for you. But if you open door number 2, your 10 nearest neighbors, but not you or your family, will receive $1 million. Just to make sure, your neighbors are legally prohibited from giving you any of their money. All 10 neighbors will become millionaires! Woo! Except you! Woo! So which door will you open? Wait. Do you open door number 1 where you and only you become an instant millionaire, or do you open door number 2 which makes your 10 neighbors millionaires? And before you tell us, think about why you would choose that door. Because you might need to explain your reasoning for door number 1 or door number 2. So in your brain right now, you might be thinking, you might say, I'd open door number 1 so I could share the money with a couple of my neighbors, but keep most of it for myself. Maybe? Okay, you don't have to raise your hand, I won't out you. Okay, you might be thinking, I'd open door number 2 because it would improve the quality of life in my neighborhood. How sweet. Maybe I choose door number 1 because I don't like my neighbors and now I could move away. You might choose door number 2 because it would result in $10 million being shared instead of just 1. Or maybe you choose door number 1 because I need the money more than my neighbors do. I don't know. So, playing this game on a game show, they never really ask you why, right? But it's interesting to think about why because it helps us hear motivations. That's what causes us to make certain choices. When we talk about the choices we make to live out our values in community, we talk about our ethics, right? And there's lots of sources for ethical guidance. For example, John Stuart Mill was a 19th century philosopher who used the term utilitarianism to describe choosing actions that will create the greatest happiness or the greatest good for the greatest number of people. So which door would create the greatest impact for the greatest number of people? Maybe two, okay. And then sometimes religion gives us ethical instructions, like the golden rule, right? We know this one, do unto others as you would want done unto yourself. Treat others the way you want to be treated. We're not going platinum this time. I've talked about that time. We're staying golden. Okay, so the golden rule, which door do you think the golden rule calls us to open? Still two. I'm hearing some ones, but maybe we lean toward two. But there are other ways to think about this decision because it's important to care for ourselves. And sometimes caring for ourselves comes first. It's true. So maybe your neighbors would use their $10 million in ways that are less responsible. Maybe you and your family really needs the money. Maybe you have some ideas about how to use $1 million to care for yourselves and your neighbors, right? So one of the things that we do in this congregation and in this faith is ask a question about why we do the things we do. Our questions and our conversations and our wonderings are usually just as important as the answers. The questions are just as important as the answers. So grown-ups, if you haven't caught on so far, you're going to be talking about this today. You'll have chances to talk through some questions with other people from our community and think about what we want here at UUCC. And as we talked about today, you'll be talking more about why? Yeah? You'll be talking more about why, thank you. So I challenge you to come to meetings and come to all the things that they tell you to do. That's my challenge for you. And be part of the why here with us. But I've never known many children or youth who have a problem with asking why. So you don't necessarily need that challenge. In fact, sometimes a why from a child or a youth can be challenging, right? So instead, I invite you to come with me and see what is behind door number 3. Why? Because it's time for us to head to class. Thank you.
Thank you, Adina. Now, please join me in our offering and acknowledging all the ways we give to this church and this world. We give because this is our church. That's right, I don't usually do this part. And we value what it does for us, to us, and through us to our community and our world. May there be an offering to sustain and grow the life and mission of this church inside and outside our walls. May we give in love and in hope. Thank you for your offering and all the ways you give to our life and ministry with your time, talent, treasure, and trust. Together, our gifts allow us to expand and strengthen the tapestry of love, wonder, and connection that blesses this church and transforms us and our world. And now we have a little special music from the Tuesday Singers.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Bertram, and I use she, her pronouns. As Jane and Steve said earlier, this call process task force is charged with leading the congregation through the process of considering whether members want to call our contract minister, Reverend Sarah Goodman, as a settled minister at UUCC. As yet another member of the call process task force, I am here today to talk about how we go about that and why. On a side note, I would like to say that I was encouraged to have my message today reflect the gravitas of this process to call a settled minister, be inspirational and spiritual, as is expected of any Sunday message, and also reflect a fun holiday vibe. Phew. Just something like that. So after some deep reflection, I've decided I will wear a holiday hat, but not elf ears. Clearly not enough gravitas. The ears would be going too far. To the brand new and new-ish folks in the audience who came here today looking for a nice holiday-themed service, I hope you enjoy the beautiful holiday music today, but I do apologize that I will be talking a fair deal about congregational business. Although, can we talk about how cool it is that our church business is conducted so transparently? That it is indeed still possible in this day and age for any form of governance to be conducted transparency. Moreover, it is timely with the approaching new year for us to self-reflect and have deliberate conversations about what we want in our ministry, for our ministry, and what the next steps are. I would guess that given the broader political climate, we each have a lot of strong feelings about what we would want for what's next. I'd like to start with, why is the call process so important? The transition from a contract to a called ministry is significant. A called minister becomes less like a consultant and evolves into a vested partner, engaged with the congregation for the fulfillment of its long-term mission. Therefore, it is important for the congregation to first understand what its long-term mission looks like before it considers a called minister to align with that long-term mission. The congregation must discern if there is an alignment that is more significant than what is sought with a consultant of any type, and if the transition to an open-ended, settled ministry seems like a good fit. And how are we approaching that process, you may ask? The call process we are using is based on guidance from the UUA Transitional Ministry Handbook. The UUA has helped many congregations over the years through the process of calling a minister, so they have a nice updated collection of best practices. As best practices, we are not beholden to follow them to the letter. We can and will tailor them, the call process and timeline, to what makes sense for our individual congregation. The call process task force has discussed this process and timeline with the board. In addition, we understand the call process is a significant move for our congregation, so we want the process to be organized and understood in advance by the entire congregation. That's part of today's service. And to meet the congregational bylaws, that's part of today's vote right after service, so stick around. Okay, all that said, what does the call process actually look like? There are three main parts to the process. First, the task force will facilitate small group meetings, aka cottage meetings, with members of the congregation in January and early February to collect your thoughts on UUCC's near-term and long-term missions, to assess the ministry of the congregation, not to evaluate the minister. The meetings will be facilitated by a member of the task force and documented by a recorder. These sessions are intended to be confidential so that members may speak freely about their concerns, their expectations, and their dreams. Second, the task force will write a summary report that summarizes the findings from the small group meetings and identifies trends and points of consensus. For example, it may use language indicating general weights, most members, some members, etc. The committee's report should clearly focus on the question, what is best for the congregation as a whole? Remember what I said earlier? It's important for the congregation to first understand what its long-term mission looks like before it considers a called minister to align with that long-term mission. Again, the task force will ensure that any comments cited in the report do not identify the speaker. If the board is satisfied with the summary report, UUCC will move forward to the third part of the process, the congregational vote. The congregation would have 2 reads to read and consider the summary report of UUCC's near-term and long-term missions before March 2nd, when the congregation would vote on whether to call Reverend Sarah as UUCC's settled minister. The call process will be completed by mid-March because it gives both the minister and the congregation appropriate time to plan for the future. To repeat, the 3 main parts to the process are the small group meetings, the summary report, and the congregational vote. Why should this process matter to you? You may recall the worship theme this month is presence. Earlier this month, we heard about being present for yourself and being present for your community. Your presence in the congregation, how you show up, and what are your obligations as a member of the church is directly connected to the call process I am talking about today. Your presence is connected to the call process because from our shared UU values, we support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions within our congregation. Each UU congregation is self-governed. The technical term is congregational polity, and it's a tradition going back almost 400 years. As UU scholar Conrad Wright states, Unitarian Universalists have been Congregationalist in polity much longer than they have been liberal in theology. As members of a UU congregation, final decisions about the calling of ministers reside with the congregants, not just with the board, with you, the members, each of you, all of you. What an exciting time this is, discussing and deciding where UUCC goes from here. And I want you to take away from today's service a feeling of agency in the call process, a sense of your own power to choose what action to take and power to make a difference. I will tell you 2 actions you can take, 2 ways you can make a difference in the ministry of this church. First is to be present at one of the small group meetings in January and February. Come and tell us, what are your visions for UUCC's near-term and long-term ministry? The UUCC mission statement declares our congregation's shared values. Through love, wonder, and connection, we transform ourselves and the world. What are your thoughts on how UUCC will transform ourselves in the world? We want to know. The second action you can take is to be present at the congregational vote on March 2nd. We need at least 40% of our members to have a quorum for that vote. It's 1 week before our favorite Spring Forward Sunday, so it will still be a little dark and maybe a little cold, but please venture forth from your warm houses to be present in the congregation for the congregation. But more than that, come and vote on whether to consider transitioning Reverend Sarah from our contract minister to our settled minister. Your vote matters. To wrap up, we cannot do everything to fix the world, but we can start by doing this thing right here, right now, to help part of our world shine. In the words of Eric Walker Wickstrom, let us do together what we cannot do alone. Carrie, where are you going?
Baker's dozen?
No. We need you to stick around for the congregational vote that's happening right after the service ends. Baker's dozen will be after the vote. Did you hear anything I just said? No, Carrie, cottage meetings. And that reminds me, before I was interrupted, I was about to tell you all about how to sign up for the small group meetings.
Well, what do we do now? I'm so busy right now. I don't know if I can contribute.
It won't be hard at all for you to participate. The Call Process Task Force has arranged about 11 small group discussion opportunities, so all you need to do is sign up for one of them on one church and show up to discuss what you and the rest of the group members want to see for UUCC's ministry.
Well, I guess that makes sense. We all need a chance to be heard and contribute. How long will these meetings last? And when are they scheduled? As I said, I'm pretty busy.
These small group meetings are important. You know how we all depend on each other to contribute and share responsibilities. The meetings don't start until after the new year, so they won't get in the way of your holiday preparations. There are meetings offered on a variety of days and times, some right here in the sanctuary after Sunday services, plus one here on a Wednesday evening. There will be at least 2 Zoom discussion meetings offered, so if you don't want to leave your home in the evening, you could sign up for one of those. Also, we have some great members who have offered their homes for small cottage meetings in the evenings, on a weekend. Some are even offering refreshments, so that might entice you to be able to fit one of these into your schedule.
This sounds more and more possible, especially that part about it not starting until after the holidays. Plus, I like that idea of snacks. Oh yeah. Speaking of snacks, can I go now?
Not yet, Carrie. I still need to tell you, the task force put together a handout for the congregation with all those meeting dates and times. That's part of your order of service. It's on the back. I can't flip. Yes. And you will receive an email early this week to help you sign up on One Church.
Wow, I think I'm starting to understand that this is a big responsibility for UCC. I definitely want to help and will make sure I'm able to fit these meetings into my schedule for January, February. One of them. Not all of them, but one. And I bet we can ask any questions of the board or the members of the task force. Who are those folks again?
Yes, the members of the task force are again Steve Smith, Kathy Wimmett, Jane Lux, you, Carrie, and me, Michelle Bertram. All right, please rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn, Angels We Have Heard on High, number 231 in the gray hymnal.
All right. So one last final words before our closing words. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever does. From Margaret Mead. In preparation for our closing, let us reach out to each other in whatever way we feel comfortable. When you go, go in peace.
Shalom and shalom.
Leave this place knowing that you are good and knowing that you are loved. Blessed be.
Take your dark and your light and your love from this place. Share them with the world and stay safe until we meet again. Amen. Thank you, everyone, and please stay in your seats. After the service, the Cawthorn Consort is gonna play or... Okay, all right. So we're gonna do the meeting, so don't go anywhere.